Hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Today is information sharing day on a topic that involves nurses just like you who are about to start working in the home care setting. Has there ever been a time when someone stood close enough to you and you ended up taking a step back? Or has anyone you barely knew come up to you and start hugging you as if they knew you forever? Or how about someone you barely knew eating your food or asking you if they could borrow something? If you haven't guessed it yet, we are going to talk about boundaries. I remember a time when I was in the early stages of my nursing career. I worked in a hospital that allowed patients to go out on a pass. Well, there was a bar down the road, and I was caring for some younger patients, and I thought I would take them out for a drink after work. I recall the nursing supervisor giving me the professional boundaries talk. It was one of the first awakenings about this topic to me. In the home care setting, nurses work one-on-one with their patients, spending many hours in the home. So it's not surprising that boundary issues occur more frequently in the home. Although there is more gray area than black and white when studying boundaries, nurses can make thoughtful decisions when provided with information about boundaries, as we're going to do today. So you ask, what is a boundary? Professional boundaries are defined as limits which protect the space between the nurse's power and the client's vulnerability. When a nurse crosses a boundary, they are behaving in an unprofessional manner and misusing the power of the relationship. There are two major types of boundaries. A boundary crossing is a deviation from traditional therapeutic activity that's usually harmless and non-exploitive. In comparison, a boundary violation is harmful to the patient and the nurse because it constitutes exploitation of the patient, using the nurse-patient relationship as its vehicle. Boundary violations often occur when the nurse displaces or confuses his or her own needs with the patient's needs. Now that we've covered the definitions, I'd like to share with you some examples. Self-disclosure. It's not always easy to keep discussions about personal issues out of the equation when providing care of a patient. Nurses need to recognize how much information is appropriate. As your relationship grows with the patient, he or she may try to make small talk, asking personal questions such as, are you married? Do you have any children? What do you like to do in your spare time? It's okay to disclose minimal information such as, yes, I'm married. Inappropriate conversation would be, yes, I'm married, but not for long. We fight all the time. Religion and politics. It is never a good idea to discuss religion and politics. It's not only inappropriate, it is also prohibited. Religion and politics are the most argued topics in the world. Nonetheless, want to stay away from them. The patient may share his or her beliefs with you. The opposite, on the other hand, cannot happen. If it does happen, and you share your beliefs with one another, disagreements and arguments can ensue, leaving very bad feelings and disrespect for one another. Money and gifts. Nurses may never accept, obtain, or attempt to obtain anything of value, including gifts, tips, or anything from the patient and family members. This includes borrowing money, gas money, using the credit card of the patient, even if you're going to pay them back. Nurses collect their wages, and they cannot accept anything beyond that. Now, Christmas and birthdays are really difficult because it's a good time for people who want to share things. But it's also a time where we need to make sure we have those boundaries set so that nurses are not put in that position, nor the patient. On the other hand, nurses should never lend or give money or gifts to a patient. Food and drink. The nurse should not eat or drink food belonging to the patient unless the patient offers. However, it is recommended that when they do offer, you decline, because it leads for an area where a boundary could be crossed in the future. Nurses should bring their own food and drink to work with them, and they should avoid using the patient's refrigerator or bringing any items that require using their stove, microwave, things like that. Boundary violation examples are such as inappropriate touch, and that's perceived as whatever the patient feels is inappropriate. Mutual business transactions. You never want to get involved in anything with a patient or their family. Giving your home or cell phone number. All of that information should be used through the agency of where you work. Sexual conduct. Professional sexual misconduct is defined as any behavior that's seductive, sexually demeaning, harassing, or reasonably interpreted as sexual by the patient. Regardless of whether or not it's consensual, it's prohibited. Most nurses review this boundary crossing and they think, I'm not going to violate this rule. Keep in mind that this rule also refers to any flirting, telling dirty or sexual jokes, calling the patient inappropriate nicknames such as hey sexy, hottie, or baby, any provocative conversation, body language, or clothing. Physical contact, not related to patient care, such as hugging and kissing. Discussing intimate relationships and pursuing a romantic relationship, or even implying as such, like, if I weren't married, I would. Consequences of these acts can involve law enforcement involvement, referrals to professional licensing boards, and possibility removal of the nursing license. So with all of those areas that nurses can cross boundaries, how would you know if you're on the wrong track? To avoid boundary violations, it might be helpful to be aware of some of the warning signs. Some of those include perception. Ask yourself, is this what other nurses would do? How would it appear to others? And how does it appear to the patient? Time. Are you spending excessive amount of time with the patient and their family versus how you spend that much amount of time with another patient? Making exceptions. Thinking that you're immune. It'll never happen to me. The nurse should carefully consider the therapeutic purpose in making exceptions in helping a patient or family member. Use your gut. Learn to recognize and trust if you are starting to feel awkward. Seek help if you're in a situation that raises questions in your mind. When in doubt, check it out. Do you become defensive if you're questioned about your interaction with the patient? Do you feel you're the only person who understands the patient? Is the nurse taking sides with the patient against the family member? Touch. Touching is an integral part of many nursing interventions. Touch may be a component of any other action, such as taking a blood pressure or doing a physical assessment. Touch, however, should not be used indiscriminately. And communication is very important. It's the responsibility of the nurse to establish and maintain boundaries and communicate these to the patient. Are you keeping secrets with the patient? Do you fail to document information or report negative information about the patient? Do you feel you're the only one that the patient communicates with openly? So how do you set boundaries or limits? You always want to remain professional. Arrive on time. Dress professionally. Don't discuss personal business. Treat the patient and the family with respect. Do what you say you're going to do. Communicate very clearly. Stay aware of your own mindset and your triggers and that gut feeling. And remain patient-focused. So then, how do you know you're on the right track? If you're responding in the best interest of the patient, if you work towards empowerment and independence, and sometimes saying no might be the best response. If you seek direction from your supervisor when you find you're doing something because you feel guilty. If you rely on your gut, and that might be a boundary crossing. So to summarize, without professional boundaries, the nurse's judgment becomes impaired and can prevent him or her from delivering adequate and appropriate care, recognizing potential health and safety risks, and communicating appropriately with other members of the healthcare team. Establishing and maintaining professional boundaries enables the nurse to deliver care in a professional and appropriate manner that reflects the integrity of the client in his or her profession. With forethought, planning, communication, and evaluation, nurses can take steps to ensure a boundary issue does not progress to a boundary violation. So now I ask you, when you go out into the home, will you be any more aware of your behaviors and actions, knowing what you do now?